As I mentioned too at the top of the show, today more evidence has emerged to expose this government's wolf in sheep's clothing tactic that won them the last election. Anthony Albanese told us, remember, that he'd be safe change. He'd cut your power bill by $275 per household. He'll raise your wages. He'd do a bit more on climate change, but there'd be no deals with the Greens. And his role model, he said, was Bob Hawke, the last Labor Prime Minister, who actually delivered a budget surplus. Well, how's that turning out? So far, there's been legislation to permit industry-wide bargaining and industry-wide strikes. The government's removed the top cop on the beat in the construction industry. There's been price caps imposed on coal and gas, so market interference on a mammoth scale. And now his treasurer and potential political rival, Jim Chalmers, has published a 6,000-word essay in the Monthly promising nothing less than to reinvent capitalism. He says has failed to deal with what he calls a polycrisis of war, pandemic, climate change and inflation. Now, Chalmers, on paper at least, is supposed to be a member of Labor's right faction, following in the footsteps, of course, of Kevin Rudd, who also wrote a 2009 Monthly essay all about the GFC and other things, but then gave us the Building Education Revolution, Pink Bats program, Fuel Watch and Grocery Watch. And former Treasurer Wayne Swan, he also wrote for the Monthly back in 2012. But we all know what happened then to his budget boast, the 4 years of a surplus I announced tonight.
The 4 years of surpluses I announced tonight are a powerful endorsement of the strength of our economy, resilience of our people and the success of our policies.
Never happened. I mean, the last time Labor delivered a surplus was 1989. I was still in high school. And sure, nothing's perfect, but under what Chalmers thinks has been a neoliberal nightmare, he's talking about the Howard years and beyond, the coalition leadership of Abbott and others, real national incomes per person have almost doubled since 1990. It was also this same so-called neoliberal nightmare, if you believe Chalmers, where Australia dodged back-to-back recessions during the 1997 Asian financial crisis, America's 2000s tech recession, and of course the 2008-09 GFC. What Labor politicians call capitalism is really just freedom in the economic sphere, as being allowed to buy and sell, to save and invest, to choose who you'll work for and who you will employ in your business. In criticising what it calls capitalism, what Labor really doesn't like is freedom. Because left to our own devices, our choices as individuals don't always line up with those of Labor or the unions. And no better evidence of that is the fact that less than 9% of us in the private sector belong to unions anymore. One way or another, Labor's reinvented capitalism. And what they're trying to do is make it about more regulation, higher taxes, sweetheart deals with rent-seeking big business types, and government forcing money to move from the less efficient, more efficient parts of the economy to the less efficient parts of the economy. If Chalmers gets his way, reinvented capitalism will be stopping us from doing what we want in favour of forcing us to do what the government wants. Take super, for instance. Our money, of course, not the government's. But because it's managed by the union super funds and isn't in our own pockets, a government knows best mode is to tell the funds where our money should be invested, and then they use their institutional weighting companies to drive the left-wing agenda out of corporate Australia. This essay from Jim Chalmers is perhaps the most significant insight we've had from this government about what exactly the road ahead looks like. And if this really is where we are headed, forget the PM's spin that he wants to be like Bob Hawke. This is a government that's looking more and more Whitlam-esque by the day.